This is CNN.
This was not a crime. That was the verdict of the jury, which acquitted 4 police officers in the Rodney King beating case.
Outrage over the verdict has turned parts of Los Angeles into a battleground. To our viewers around the world, welcome to World Day. I'm Reid Collins.
And I'm Bobbie Battista. A not guilty verdict on all but one charge in the Rodney King beating trial sparked a night of terror, bloodshed, and destruction in Los Angeles. 8 people have been killed, 138 others at least are reported injured. Police report 25 arrests have been made. In a statement issued this morning, President Bush said, quote, "Yesterday's verdict in the Los Angeles police case has left us all with a deep sense of frustration and anguish. Yet it is important that we respect the law. Today, Los Angeles faces the aftermath of a terrible night of violence in which several people have lost their lives. I call upon all citizens to be calm and abide the law." The president delayed a scheduled trip to Ohio to meet with Attorney General William Barr. CNN's Ann McDermott has been following the violence through the night in Los Angeles, and she joins us now live with an update. Ann?
Well, it's a little after 7 a.m. here now, and while there's still plenty of activity behind me at the Police Command Center, things in the street have calmed down considerably. Still, there was an eerie haze that hung over the city this morning, a haze made up of the smoke of burned-out buildings. There are still a few fires burning this morning, but most of them have been put out, and the sporadic gunfire that was heard throughout the night has ceased for the most part, and even the looters, it seems, have gotten what they wanted and gone home. CNN's Gloria Hillard now reports on LA's night of rage.
Fueled by anger, South Central Los Angeles erupted within hours of the Rodney King verdict. Buildings became infernos. Firefighters responding to the blazes were met with hostility. Several firefighters were reportedly shot at. Police with shotguns stood guard. Looters swept through the streets, taking anything they could carry. Even a small girl sought bounty from the streets of Los Angeles. From the sky, television news helicopters broadcast live footage of the rampage below. One of the most horrifying pictures of the evening occurred when teenagers attacked a couple of drivers they pulled from their vehicles. City buildings were stormed. A bus and a police car overturned. On the streets, there was a feeling of fear. Governor Pete Wilson declared a state of emergency in Los Angeles County and said he has made available some 2,000 National Guardsmen ready to move in with tanks if necessary.
There is going to be every effort made to protect people who need protection. The violation of law clearly is not going to assist anyone. It simply makes a problem much worse.
Most of the violence was concentrated in the black areas of the city, but as the night wore on, there were flare-ups around the greater Los Angeles area. Mayor Tom Bradley issued this plea to the community.
I know that we must express our profound outrage, our anger, but we must do so in ways that bring honor to ourselves and our community.
Police asked television and radio stations to urge residents to stay home and off the streets.
So the best thing for you to do is just get away from here and come back tomorrow.
Police Chief Daryl Gates told reporters a dusk-to-dawn curfew was being issued for the ravaged areas of the city.
A ban on gun sales, ban on selling of gasoline except into a automobile tank. And as we move forward, I think we'll be able to get this thing under control, but it's going to take some time.
Through the night, the fires and feelings continued to smolder, reminding many of August 1965, when the Watts riot scarred this city and seared lasting images into a national consciousness. Gloria Hillard, CNN, Los Angeles.
And what's going on in the city today, and what kind of preparations are they making for tonight?
Well, besides the dawn to dusk curfew that Gloria mentioned, schools in the areas hit by the disturbances have been closed today. And the mayor has ordered a couple of things, like he has banned the sale of guns and ammunition. Also, the police will continue to be out in force throughout today and tonight. Most people here are hoping, frankly, that the worst is over, but right now I don't believe anybody's prepared to guarantee that.
All right, our thanks to Ann McDermott reporting live from Los Angeles. In a few moments, we'll be talking live with L.A. City Councilman Mark Ridley-Thomas. Reid?
This rioting followed 7 days of jury deliberations, at least they were out that long, and more than a year of controversy since Rodney King's videotaped arrest. CNN's Greg Lamont has more on the trial and the public outcry it has sparked.
With a dramatic videotape of a beating as its star witness, this was seemingly a slam-dunk case against 4 police officers accused of excessive force against motorist Rodney King. But in a hushed courtroom, it was learned the jury decided otherwise.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Stacy C. Kuhn, not guilty of the crime of assault by force likely to produce great bodily injury and with a deadly weapon.
3 of the accused officers were acquitted of all charges, but the jury hopelessly deadlocked on one charge of excessive force under color of authority against Officer Lawrence Powell, the one seen doing most of the beating in the videotape. A mistrial was declared on that charge. This was the reaction just outside the courthouse. Sheriff's deputies had to protect Sergeant Stacy Kuhn as he made his way to his car. Obscenities were screamed at him, along with threats of physical violence. Fights almost broke out among supporters and protesters of the verdict. Signs of shame were visible in the crowd that at one point chanted, "Burn down the courthouse."
By having this verdict, what these people have done, they lit the fuse to a bomb. And what happens after this, people are going to point to this.
I'm emotional. I'm upset. It's about the worst thing I've ever felt since I knew Martin Luther King had been shot.
Prosecuting attorney Terry White was dumbfounded by the verdict.
I'm shocked by the verdict, and I'm disappointed. But the jury has spoken. We picked 12 impartial jurors. And they listened to all the evidence in this case, and they rendered their verdict, and we have to live with that verdict.
Defense attorneys and their clients were relieved and elated.
It's hard to be surprised when you felt that way the whole way. You're just hoping for the right decision. And because, you know, I know I'm innocent, and that was the verdict.
One of the things that I thought was very important in this case in the beginning was to try to put the jurors in the shoes of the police officers at the scene, all of them. And I think we were able to do that.
Rodney King's attorney was livid.
It's a good time, folks. If you got a plane ticket, cash it in and get the heck out of Dodge. This is going to be a bad place to live.
Mr. King, will you speak out about this now, please?
I think Mr. King is right now in a sense of shock. He's in a state of shock.
The jury members opted not to talk to the media, saying the trial had been extremely stressful. It was a jury some spectators called racist.
Once again, Archie Bunker wins. That's the final and ultimate message that it sends, because the jury was definitely influenced by Archie Bunker.
The trial was moved from Los Angeles to nearby Ventura County in Simi Valley. There are few blacks who live here, and there were no blacks on the jury.
I do not think that it was a racial decision, and I know for a fact that Tim Wynn's behavior on March 3rd of 1991 had nothing to do with Rodney King's skin color.
Here at the courthouse, a handful of supporters of the verdict were quickly shouted down by dozens of angry protesters, and they were forced to leave. Greg Lamont, CNN, Simi Valley, California.
The Reverend Jesse Jackson is calling for a congressional investigation and for the Justice Department to intervene on King's behalf. He spoke to CNN by phone last night just after the verdict.
The jury's verdict was unjust. It was unfair. It was a jury of the policeman's peers. It was not a jury of Rodney King's peers. There's a sense of outrage across the entire country. And in Los Angeles, of course, with 40 to 50% unemployment in the Watts area, when you combine humiliation with the poverty, you have this explosion you see taking place now. And also, the Rodney King case cannot be separated from a police department that gained some national reputation, killing young black males with chokeholds, for example.
Jackson called on President Bush to assure the country, and we quote, that the entire judicial system has not collapsed on black people.
Stay with CNN. We'll be talking live to an LA City Councilman about what is to come in the aftermath of the violence.
To explore American history, all you need is a map of Virginia. Route 460, Appomattox. Interstate 64, Monticello. In southeast of Richmond, down the same road, there's Colonial Williamsburg, Yorktown, and Jamestown. But now, if you like your history to go back even further, take Route 702. Left of the big tree, walk about 50 feet, and listen. Call for your free Virginia vacation guide.
You scum! I never want to see you again. I hate soap scum like this, so I use X14 Soap Scum Remover. It's made to get rid of disgusting soap scum. So try X14 Soap Scum Remover.
Hey, is Tegrin shampoo on sale?
Nope, that's their new lower price.
But it's still just as tough on dandruff, right?
Sure, Tegrin doesn't do less, just costs less.
Sounds right to me.
Tegrin, the right dandruff shampoo at the right price. Fleischmann's Margarine asks, what is good? Fleischmann's Margarine. Be good to yourself.
Your dentist told you about plaque, but you didn't listen. You need the new Braun Oral-B Plaque Remover. It removes plaque just like your dentist wants you to.
That shelf should hold now, Doc.
The Braun Oral-B Plaque Remover.
The Murine Earwax Removal System has drops that safely loosen hardened wax when used as directed, plus an ear washer to gently flush wax away. Murine, the complete medically approved system to safely remove earwax.
Good morning.
Are you tired of morning news shows that give you everything but the news?
Big events happening overseas, but first...
Is your pet psychic? We'll find out.
Wake up to headline news for the latest news, business, and sports around the clock.
Once again, a not guilty verdict on all but one charge in the Rodney King beating trial sparked a night of bloodshed and destruction in Los Angeles. The city is reported to be mostly calm this morning. 8 people have been killed, though, and at least 138 others are reported injured.
It is inevitable, of course, that this current rioting in Los Angeles would recall the devastation of the Watts riot, as they call it, of 1965. For 6 days in 1965, the long-simmering frustrations in Los Angeles' black ghetto, Watts they called it, expressed themselves in an orgy of destruction over the arrest of a black man. $40 million in arson, other damage inflicted mostly in the black ghetto. 34 people were killed, and most of the victims were black. More than 1,000 were hurt, and most of these, too, were black. In the 27 years since, sincere efforts have been made to address the problems of the black community, but not a lot has changed. Drug and despair still are epidemic. In the face of last night's new violence, many blacks, though, are fearful of once again becoming the victims of their own anger.
I can understand, but I don't agree with what's going on. I can understand how they feel, but I don't agree. Because this is our neighborhood, this is the recession. People are going to come here and have no jobs.
The problem is that, you see, it's true that we don't agree with them, but they have no choice. These are people who've been deprived from birth, who've had no choice, who have no way to express themselves, and the only way they know to express themselves is their anger, is their violence. So until you improve the community, until you put schools there, and you teach them and you give them justice, this is going to keep happening and happening again.
If they were going to use violence or destruction as a way of expressing their feelings, that they should have taken it to Simi Valley, to Beverly Hills, to where the people that they're fighting against live, not in their own neighborhoods where the prices are going to skyrocket when they reopen the stores. And who's going to pay but us? They're defeating the whole purpose.
Why take it out on this community? We're crying out for help. Nobody's listening to us, but then we do something stupid to our own community. It doesn't make sense to me.
The disturbance in Los Angeles once again brings into prominence the question of public and police relations. With us in Los Angeles is City Councilman Mark Ridley-Thomas, who has been working on a committee that has drafted a bill on police reform, which I'd like to talk with you about in just a few minutes, Mr. Thomas. But I know that you, along with many others, are greatly saddened by what has happened in your city in the last 24 hours. Your reaction, sir, the morning after?
Well, it's still a state of disbelief that we find ourselves in. When we think about the verdict, we are absolutely appalled. And now, with the devastation that has occurred, that's a reactive violence, you might call it, it has made the job of those of us who represent South Central Los Angeles much more difficult than it was already in the first instance.
You had indeed, and may have again, a city out of control. How did that happen?
Well, it's hard to know how it happened, but there are several features or factors to the situation being out of control. The Christopher Commission, who studied the Los Angeles Police Department, in some ways suggested that the department was out of control, or at least there was too much of a minority in the department that was out of control. It essentially said the chief, in many respects, was out of control, and as a result, needed to step aside.
Well, Daryl Gates is still police chief of Los Angeles, and I'm wondering how could he have underestimated the response to that an acquittal might have brought?
Well, Daryl Gates has been so embroiled in the events that surround him until, as many of us have said, the focus on effective law enforcement hasn't been the top priority for him over the past 15 months in this town. And we insisted that his staying on as chief would be a liability more so than it had been prior to that time of the Rodney King beating. And here it is, it has come to pass. But none of that, in my mind, should be a way of excusing the destruction that has taken place in South Central Los Angeles, a community that has yet to recuperate from the ravages of the Watts uprising in 1965. This situation only compounds circumstances that were already bad. Now we have desperation that abounds in ways that are just practically impossible to deal with.
Mr. Thomas, I want to ask you in a moment what all of this says about the structure of the, shape of the administrative structure of Los Angeles. In just a moment, stay with us, please, and we'll take a break.
Give it over.
The only problem with ice chests is the ice. Yes, it's the ice. Not to mention the icy mess. That's why we're introducing Cool-Mate, the electric igloo. Just plug it in. It keeps food and drinks cool and dry, and it never needs ice. Cool-Mate, the electric igloo.
For tires, there's only one name I look up to.
America's #1 name in tires.
And there's one tire store that I trust.
Is now at America's #1 tire store. Goodyear comes to Sears. And right now, selected Goodyear tires are introductory priced.
I got Goodyear tires. I got them backed by Sears. I don't need to hear anything else.
America's #1 tire now at America's #1 tire store.
Who's going to back you better than Sears?
I remember it felt like the hottest day of the year. I was all alone with the kids. Then it happened. The cooling went out.
Mommy, I'm hot!
I had to do something fast, and it had to be right. I called my Reid dealer. He was there in no time. He said he'd take care of the problem, and he did. What could have been a very hot day in our lives was made right, thanks to our Reid dealer.
You know it's right if it's Reid.
I'm trying it, and I feel great.
It's Grape Nuts. Try it for a week.
Breakfast with Nuts helps keep us going all morning. It's a natural energy source, and it's fat-free.
Post Grape Nuts cereal. Try it for a week.
You'll feel so good you did.
Quick, hurry up. You're on in 2 minutes.
Out you go.
Yeah, but we gotta work up an act. How do I look?
Like a fat raccoon.
Oh, this is my cue.
Ah, my public. How they love me.
Graphic scenes of destruction from the city of Los Angeles last night in the aftermath of the acquittal of 4 police officers in the beating of motorist Rodney King. We have just learned that Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley will be holding a news conference at 12:15 Eastern Time, and CNN will bring you that news conference live. We are right now talking to LA City Councilman Mark Ridley-Thomas, and we were discussing what all of this says about the administrative structure of LA. And Mr. Thomas, you are an advocate of a reform proposal that would give the mayor-appointed police commission more control over the police department and limit the term of the police chief. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have placed on the ballot for vote of the electorate Charter Amendment F, which does three essential things. One, it limits the term of office for the chief of police to 10 years. The 2 5-year terms are renewable if deemed appropriate by the police commission, the mayor, and the city council. It also takes away the civil service protection that the chief of police currently enjoys. So never again will we find ourselves in a situation where a chief of police like that of Daryl Gates will be able to thumb his nose at the entirety of the city and say, you can't do anything about what I do, and I'm going to do it regardless. Secondly, it gives the police commission an independent staff. Currently, the police commission, who by the city charter is supposed to supervise the chief of police, has a staff that is essentially hired by the chief of police because they are sworn personnel rather than civilians. And finally, it expands the possibilities for discipline so that the chief of police can more effectively handle some of the problems that we now understand have plagued the LAPD with repeat performances, that is, patterns of police misconduct on the part of any number of officers.
Speaking of that, there are yet to be disciplinary hearings against the 4 officers involved. Will those move forward?
I've been told that they will move forward, and there's already the sentiment that has been expressed that the officers ought to be fired based on the fact that the official position of the police department, as represented by Commander Bostic in his testimony, was that those officers acted out of policy, and they did indeed use excessive force, and this is precisely why many of us are appalled by the verdict.
There were also 8 people killed in the violence last night. 6 of them, we understand, criminal homicides. Will there be investigations and arrests in connection with those?
The arrests have already begun, and there are more happening as we speak. The situation remains one where things are very tense. There is a considerable amount of anger, outrage, as well as fear. And this community has suffered a devastating setback, and I'm simply suggesting that it's largely due to the absolute insensitivity of that jury, which amounts to what has been called already a travesty of justice.
Mark Ridley-Thomas, much work to be done. Good luck to you.
Thank you very kindly.
Thank you for joining us today. Reid?
And still ahead on World Day, has an Exxon International executive been kidnapped from his home in New Jersey? We'll have the latest information from U.S. law enforcement officials. Authorities in India investigate a series of explosions in the capital city of New Delhi. And also, is there some new information about the U.S. MIAs? Is it enough, then, for the U.S. and Vietnam to forge new diplomatic ties? A discussion of the topic is coming up.
Wasted time.
Not enough time. The cost of parenthood. Voters are still
Unemployment.
You never needed it more. A new extra-strength pain reliever made to get today's tough headaches before they really get you. 1,000 milligrams strong. Stomach guard. And the name Bayer. That should ease your mind. Introducing new extra-strength Bayer Plus. Now there's no pain you can't bear.
I was going over my bank statement, and I saw that my rates had never been so low. This is all I'm earning?
Common sense says you can't always depend on yesterday's solutions.
You've got to be kidding.
Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, has the income opportunities you may want.
So we're talking investments.
The interest rates I used to get, they're just not there anymore.
Wondering how safe this one or that one is.
But now you want something solid. Who knows? There's got to be something out there.
Sometimes the answer's a lot closer than you think.
Fidelity offers you high current yields with the credit safety of U.S. government securities, higher than you may be earning in the bank, with no sales charge. That's why over 2 million people trust Fidelity to help their money earn more. So call Fidelity now for this free booklet, a common sense guide to investing for income. You'll also receive everything you need to start. Call Fidelity now at 1-800-237-4400. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
Nearly 5.5 billion people live on this planet, 1/5 in absolute poverty. How long can the Earth's resources sustain a birth rate spiraling out of control? The People Bomb, Sunday, 9 Eastern on CNN.
In New Delhi, India, the death toll in a series of unexplained explosions is nearing 30. Wednesday, 3 buildings in a crowded bazaar blew up and touched off a big fire. Investigators say they think volatile chemicals stored in one of those buildings may have triggered the blasts. Destruction, though, is so complete, and the investigators are not certain whether terrorist bombs or simple carelessness are responsible. In Sri Lanka, it's tit-for-tat massacring that has left more than 100 persons dead. Earlier in the week, Tamil separatists attacked a Muslim village and killed more than 50 men, women, and children. Muslims usually side with the Sri Lankan Buddhist majority, who are opposed to the Tamil separatists. Muslims, however, sprang a revenge raid on Tamil villages this time. Again, more than 50 were indiscriminately slaughtered. In Taiwan, dozens of McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken fast food restaurants are closed now. This following the bomb attacks and bomb threats against the chains by suspected extortionists. One policeman died and a number of people, including children, were injured. The managers of the restaurant chain say they will reopen with security guards to ensure their customer safety.
Bosnia-Herzegovina was voted in today as the 52nd member of the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe. Overnight, ethnic fighting in the former Yugoslav Republic intensified in Sarajevo and surrounding towns. Several people died in what Croatian radio reports is the heaviest artillery fire in 8 weeks of fighting. European Community foreign ministers meet tomorrow to work on solutions to end the conflict. As the new leaders of Afghanistan meet in Kabul, radical guerrillas are firing rockets on the capital city, and the new government's forces are said to be responding with artillery and tank fire. The new defense minister, Ahmad Shah Massoud, a moderate rebel leader until a few days ago, arrived in Kabul yesterday with several thousand troops. A general working with Massoud says he expects the new leaders to launch a major offensive against radical guerrillas.
U.S. State Department officials say today they will outline their objections to limits on greenhouse gas emissions. International negotiators have been working in New York City to come up with some environmental treaty that could be signed in Rio de Janeiro at the conference in June. Environmentalists say the United States position might prompt other nations to walk out of this week's Earth Summit. U.S. officials will hold a news conference explaining their position at the United Nations this afternoon. And when World Day returns, returning veterans from the Vietnam War, what happened to those who didn't come home? A discussion on the topic and the future of U.S.-Vietnamese diplomatic relations still ahead. Also, our international sanctions against Libya doing harm to innocent children. We'll hear why Colonel Gaddafi has summoned in the Western reporters.
Recently, the International Motorsports Association held a decathlon, performance and control. Over 22 days, 7 cars competed in 10 events to determine which was best overall. It wasn't Acura or Volvo, nor Mercedes or Mazda, nor Lexus or BMW, but the Audi 100 V6, the IMSA Decathlon Gold Medal winner.
Lots of margarines say they have a buttery taste, even when there's no butter in them. Kraft Touch-A-Butter spread has creamy, rich butter in it. Just a touch. Kraft Touch-A-Butter. A touch of real butter makes a real difference.
I smoke, but on this flight, cigarettes are grounded. My answer? Wrigley Spearmint Gum. And that cool, clean taste never lets me down.
When I can't smoke, I enjoy pure chewing satisfaction.
World Day continues, followed by Day Watch after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
I've been eating A.E. cottage cheese for years. Some people think it's just for diets, but I'm smarter than that. Mommy and Daddy serve it with lots of foods that I can't even pronounce. But I like it right out of the carton. And in case you didn't know, the small curds were made small cottages, and the large curds were made large cottages.
A.E. cottage cheese. It's not just for diets anymore.
I knew that.
Hi, my name's Mike Spurl. I used to have cancer. A few years ago, I was on TV for Iowa Methodist Medical Center.
They smiled when things went well. They shared tears with us when things didn't go well.
This time, I'd like to say thanks to the people at Iowa Methodist and to remind everybody that I'm still here, better than ever. And so is the Cancer Center at Iowa Methodist.
The new John Stoddard Cancer Center at Iowa Methodist. We're in this fight together.
This is CNN.
Now checking our top story on World Day. A state of emergency has been declared in Los Angeles County following a night of rioting and looting into the predominantly black South Central Los Angeles areas. A total of 9 people have lost their lives. More than 100 have been hurt in violence touched off by the verdicts on those 4 policemen returned yesterday. After 7 days of deliberations, an all-white jury had acquitted 4 white policemen who had been charged with beating black motorist Rodney King. The verdict surprised the prosecutors and others, given the videotape which had been introduced as evidence and showed the officers striking King with their batons dozens of times during his arrest. Well, hundreds of fires were set overnight, and one still was burning a half hour ago. This is late video from KTLA in the South Central area. This is by dawn's early light, where, as we see, a large building is engulfed in flames. Firemen are trying to fight the blaze. The firemen have been protected by police who ride shotgun on the fire engines and try to prevent any attack on the firemen. There have been cases of firemen attacked during the night trying to put out the fires. 2,000 National Guardsmen are on standby, ready to be called in.
Democratic presidential candidate Bill Clinton reacted to yesterday's verdicts in the Rodney King beating trial. During a campaign appearance in Washington this morning, Clinton was asked if he thought the verdicts were wrong.
All I can tell you is that I saw the films like millions of Americans, and I have real questions about it. And there is a difference between the law, which has been settled in the state courts, and what the morality of the situation was. And I think it is obvious that lurking beneath that verdict, there is this huge, gaping feeling that the system is broken, unresponsive, and unfair.
Clinton, however, was careful to say that since he was not part of the jury, he was not criticizing its members. Let's check the latest financial headlines now with Beverly Shook at the business desk in New York.
Thanks, Bobbie. It's a mixed day for world stock markets. In the U.S., stocks are up, but just slightly as investors digest the latest economic data. Factory orders rose slightly last month. Unemployment claims held steady for the most recent period. And the government's economic forecasting gauge rose for the 3rd straight month. Following those reports, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up just about 1 point at 33.33. Trading volume is heavy, 53 million shares traded so far. The broader and secondary markets are all higher, and shares of Chrysler down 5/8 of a point at $19 a share. That despite reporting better than expected first quarter results. Chrysler narrowed its loss to $13 million in the first quarter compared to last year. In London today, stocks are giving back yesterday's gains. Right now, the Financial Times 100 share index off 22.5 at 26.42. And a retreat for stocks overnight in Tokyo. The Nikkei average lost 136 points. It closed at 17,390. Germany is not the only country facing strikes today. In France, more than 8,000 dockers have gone on strike for the 2nd time this week. The communist-led CGT union called the strike to renegotiate a contract that was accepted 2 days ago. In other labor news, Germany and Britain object to a plan to limit the work week in the European community. The legislation calls for a 48-hour limit each week and a minimum of 4 weeks paid vacation. Britain says the plan would be costly and damaging to business. Other members of the EC could outvote those objecting. A decision does not have to be unanimous. And we'll be back in 1 hour. That's the latest in business news. I'm Beverly Shook at the CNN Business News Desk in New York.
The head of Exxon's international division is missing, and police have not ruled out a kidnapping. Sidney Risso's car was discovered down at the end of his driveway in Morristown, New Jersey yesterday morning. The door was open and the engine was still running. The car was discovered an hour and a half after Risso's wife said that he had left for work. The county prosecutor says officers have searched the region around the home looking for clues into the disappearance.
Mr. Risso is an extremely well-respected member of the business community at the top of the corporate structure at Exxon International. He's been with Exxon for most of his career, as I understand it through my conversations with Exxon and a review of his biography. And he's a significant figure in international business, and his disappearance is of concern to us, and we will continue to invest our staff and efforts in attempting to locate him.
Police say Risso's family received no threats, and there have been no sign of struggle in the driveway. In just a moment, we'll discover, if we can, the mystery of the MIAs, and is there satisfaction now with the latest to come from Southeast Asia.
Presents conclusive evidence that the term sedan doesn't always have to mean sedate. The 1992 Acura Legend. Ask your Acura dealer about our new luxury lease program.
I'm State Farm Agent Jeff Libby. One of the most gratifying parts of my job is helping young parents, people who are just beginning to understand what life insurance is all about. Young couples don't need a sales talk. They just need to talk to someone who understands them and their life insurance needs. Now, I know what that promise of security means, and I don't believe there's a better promise a parent can make.
State Farm sells life insurance.
Put more than one person in the average New York City hotel room, and before long, they're bouncing off the walls. But at Embassy Suites, you get a spacious two-room suite, 2 remote TVs, a microwave, 3 phones, complimentary breakfast, and much more, all for the price of an ordinary hotel room. Twice the comfort and twice the value. Embassy Suites, New York. It's twice the hotel, even if we only have one door.
CNN's Democracy in America team brings you election information you can use. Together, they help give the process back to the people. As part of the most experienced team ever assembled to cover Campaign USA 92, only on CNN.
Hello, I'm Donna Kelly. Coming up at the top of the hour for our U.S. viewers, a live update from Los Angeles, where overnight riots turned part of that city into a war zone. Also, we'll take another look at that now famous Rodney King beating tape to see what the jury saw. Those stories and more coming up at the top of the hour on Day Watch. Reid?
A small step, but in a positive direction. This is how Vietnam is cautiously responding to a move by the United States to relax its 28-year-long economic embargo. Washington yesterday announced plans to allow commercial sales to meet basic human needs in Vietnam. U.S. State Department says this decision is a response to Vietnam's strengthened commitment to resolving the cases of the American servicemen still missing from the Vietnam War. It was 17 years ago this week that the capital of South Vietnam was overrun by Viet Cong and North Vietnamese. Helicopters left the rooftop of the American embassy, and these became the metaphor for American defeat. Bitter rice, the residue of which still stings. For most of America, the war ended, though, in 1973 with the signing of the Paris Accords and then the return of some 591 Americans who'd been held captive by North Vietnam. But what of the 2,266 still listed as missing? They live in the memories of those who love them, and they haunt the halls of the Congress. Now and then a photograph emerges from the jungle green. It usually is found to be a fraud. Back from that region, and what may have been a watershed survey of the area now, is a Senate committee headed by Massachusetts Democrat John Kerry, himself a Vietnam veteran.
It is my sense that this tortured, long chapter with respect to Vietnam could possibly be brought to a close in the next months, providing that Vietnam, Laos, but particularly Vietnam in the immediacy, and our State Department and Defense Departments do all that they have promised to do and follow up on the process that has been made available.
Joining us now live from Capitol Hill on World Day is Senator Kerry. And in our studio is Robert Muller, Executive Director of Vietnam Veterans of America. This is the only congressionally chartered Vietnam Veterans Organization. Senator Kerry, you say things yet remain to be done. Will this mystery ever be satisfactorily explained, do you believe, to the bulk of America?
I believe it can be, Reid, and I'm very hopeful that the process is now in place that will permit that to happen. And as I said, hopefully in the next months. The General Secretary of the Communist Party met with us and said point blank, what do we have to do to resolve this issue? I think there's a desire to resolve it, and we said, here's what you have to do. Give us access to places in your country, prisons, hospitals, etc. Give us access to records and archives, to data of your military units. Give us access to people who were in that system and can help us to discover what happened. Help us logistically, and return the remains that you discover as rapidly as you discover them. If those things are judged to happen in the next months, I think this chapter can be closed.
Marine Bobbie Muller, will that close the chapter for you and yours?
The chapter should have been closed a long time ago, quite frankly. It's unbelievable to me that 19 years after the last American combat troops left, that we are punishing the people in Vietnam, the majority of whom weren't even alive when we had our war in Vietnam, because of the return of remains of soldiers that were killed many, many years ago. It's wrong to say that these people are missing. The overwhelming majority of them were known to have been killed, but their bodies, for various reasons, such as crashing into mountaintops or into the sea, were not recoverable. The individual services of the Air Force and the Army and the Navy reviewed the rest of the cases and declared them dead. We're not talking about over 2,000 missing. These people are dead. It's got to be remembered, and Senator Kerry has done an exemplary job in bringing this fact forward. There has been no substantiated or corroborated evidence over all of these years provided by our government to support the belief that there are live Americans being held prisoner in Vietnam. It's just a tragedy. It's unbelievable.
All right, Senator Kerry, there is a sub-theme that runs under this that indicates that some believe, at least for a time after the so-called Paris agreements, there were live Americans and they were being held. Do you believe that?
Well, let me use that question, Reid, if I may, to also answer what Bobbie has said. I mean, he's right. It is incredible that 19 years later we're where we are. But we're where we are for a reason. I mean, this isn't something that Congress created. It isn't something that families created. There is a legitimate belief about some people, and he's correct. It is not about the full 2,266, but about a lesser number. The question is, what is that number? We don't really know. And there is evidence that the committee will be examining publicly that in 1973, when we signed the Paris Peace Accords, some number of people were probably alive. Now, the evidence we had in our hands at that time was that they were last known to be alive in the hands of either the Laotians or the Vietnamese. And we know they were alive because a wingman on a shoot-down happened to see and talk to his other pilot who was being surrounded by Vietnamese. He may well have been killed, but he may not. And it's that lingering doubt that we are trying to resolve. There is some intelligence data that shows that people were, in fact, tracked in captivity for a period of time. The question is, what happened to them? And no one's trying to refight the war, I can assure you, on this committee. We are simply trying to honor an obligation, if you will, between nation and service person, that those who put on the uniform are owed the allegiance of their country in accounting for what happens to them in time of war. My belief is that Vietnam is intent on helping us to understand what happened to those cases that do provide the kinds of question that I've just raised. And it is absolutely not in the thousands. It is a small number, and we're trying to ascertain precisely what that number is.
Let's get a little more precise and continue this conversation right after World Day takes a break, men.
Mercury Sable continues to distinguish itself as a leader in automotive design. This year, we redesigned the exterior, the interior, the instrument panel, and equipped it with dual airbags, a feature not offered by any other manufacturer in this class. Other than that, we've pretty much left it alone. All this and the quality of a Mercury.
This is a reminder that your puppy is not a dog. A puppy needs almost twice the nutrition of a fully grown adult dog. And Puppy Chow brand puppy food has all the extra nutrition your puppy needs. So he'll grow up to be big and strong and mature, just like Daddy. So feed your dog adult dog food and feed your puppy Puppy Chow from Purina.
Gillette presents Sensor, the system, the technology that will change the way you shave forever. Sensor, twin blades set on springs to read your face and respond. Independent suspension to sense and adjust to every curve of your face. No other razor comes close. Gillette Sensor, for the best shave a man can get.
NBA playoffs on TNT. A real battle in Seattle, but first a wake-up call in New Jersey. Uh-oh! The Cavs battle back. Then the Warriors fight to survive in Seattle. Playoff intensity starting at 8 Eastern. Tonight on TNT.
He's out to lunch.
For president. Back now to our conversation about the MIAs with Senator John Kerry, just back from a survey of the region, and with Bobbie Muller, who is the executive director of the Vietnam Veterans of America Foundation. He founded a couple of organizations, but is currently with the foundation. Mr. Muller, do you believe that there were, as we indicated, perhaps some survivors of the war who since have died, and do you believe it important to try to find out their fate ultimately?
Absolutely, but I don't think that's the reason to punish a nation of 69 million people 20 years later and cause the suffering that we're causing throughout Vietnam. I don't think that Americans understand, because I've certainly traveled the country to talk about this issue, that the U.S. is in fact crippling Vietnam. It has denied all of the international development assistance that a war-torn, underdeveloped country like Vietnam needs to recover. All the International Monetary Fund assistance, the World Bank assistance, the Asia Development Bank assistance, so that the country can have its infrastructure, which is basically its transportation, its energy, and its communications mechanisms, put online so that investment and business and the development can take place in that country. That's all been denied because of the continued U.S. punishment.
But Mr. Muller, we rebuild and do these things that you describe to countries that we defeat. You seem to fail to recall which end the stick is on now.
That's right, and you've just put your finger right on the problem. It's continuing American bitterness on the part of actually just a handful of senior people within the respective Reagan and Bush administrations that have continued this policy of hostility towards Vietnam. You know, like the senator said, yes, there were people that were alive when the American forces pulled out, but that's been a documented fact for an awful long time. But I'm sure the senator is going to agree.
Well, actually, it really hasn't been documented. It's never been documented, and that's part of the problem.
Senator,
it's never been documented.
Well, we may get arguing, and we'll get into the public hearings you're holding, but there were 90 people that were Americans that were left in Vietnam after the fall of 17 years ago today, April 30th in 1975. The point of it is, I don't want to get back 20 years ago on what the state of affairs was then. You'll agree, I'm sure, because you've had access to a lot more intelligence than I have, that there's been nothing to substantiate a current belief that there are any Americans that are held alive in Indochina. And the Vietnamese have been really cooperative with you. They've jumped through some, hoops to accommodate you.
The Vietnamese have now, most recently, reached a new level of cooperation. The fact that you can achieve a new level of cooperation underscores the fact that you weren't at the fullest possible level of cooperation previously. And that's what people have really been responding to. We have been, for instance, receiving some remains in a piecemeal fashion. When we visited Hawaii, we were shown remains that came back of one person, but part of those remains had teeth from someone else. Later, other remains came back, and it turns out that more teeth from this unidentified person are in those remains, which means that all of these remains were collected at one particular point in time and somehow
That's not an assumption that I would make, Senator.
Well,
I think they're throwing everything they possibly can at the United States and say, look, here's everything we got. We can't make sense out of stuff that was dug up from 20 years ago.
Yeah,
and
but
Senator,
they've
returned hundreds and hundreds of sets of remains.
The fact is, you do not find teeth from one particular body and then have teeth from the same body come back at a different point in time unless those teeth were together at one point in time. I mean, that's just a fact.
Senator, let me ask you a concluding thing.
Will this be wrapped up here
shortly? Can it be wrapped up as you indicated?
Well, that's the point that I want to make is let's not get bogged down in these individual situations. Vietnam has reached an extraordinary level of cooperation. One day after we returned from Vietnam, the administration has responded by lifting 2 more portions of the embargo, significant ones, non-governmental organizations and food and humanitarian type of sales. I believe we are on a terrific road at this point. If the Vietnamese do what they have promised to do in the next few months, Bob will see the full embargo lifted, and we will see our nations move to have a better relationship.
Gentlemen, I thank you both for your time and your opinions and for the emotions that run beneath this entire conversation. Thank you. Bobbie.
Reid, well, the day's events today have precluded a detailed sports report, but let's take a quick look at scores on a roll.
I heard, but I'll be back.
I know.
Count me out when you make a mistake.
I know, Mr. Connors.
My doc says ibuprofen for body pain. The medicine, a Nuprin.
My trainer, too.
Got a Nuprin.
Nupit. Nupit with Nuprin.
Strong stuff.
Just takes one.
Even a young guy like you uses it.
I Nupit.
This party ain't over, kid.
For back, joint, or muscle pain.
Nupit.
Nupit.
With Nuprin.
The body pain medicine.
The business world can be a real jungle. So a cellular telephone that squawks, buzzes, or hisses is for the birds. With Oki phones, you'll hear clear, true voice quality. Noise-free. On an Oki phone, there are no annoying chirps or squawks. Get an Oki cellular phone. You'll hear the difference.
Recently,
the International Motorsports Association held a decathlon, performance and control. Over 22 days, 7 cars competed in 10 events to determine which was best overall. It wasn't Acura or Volvo, nor Mercedes or Mazda, nor Lexus or BMW, but the Audi 100 V6, the IMSA Decathlon Gold Medal winner.
There's a place on Florida's southwest coast that's so natural, I call it Florida's Florida. Come on down and see for yourself, because it's going to be another great day on Lee Island Coast. There's exotic wildlife, terrific golf and tennis, exciting water sports, unbeatable fishing, and fascinating historical attractions. Call this number to find out more about Florida's Florida. Hey, you'll see why I say the fun comes naturally on Lee Island Coast.
And that's World Day. I'm Reid Collins in Washington.
And I'm Bobbie Battista at CNN Center in Atlanta. We leave you now with the latest on the situation in Los Angeles. Police say 8 people have been killed and 138 injured in overnight rioting. The violence came shortly after not guilty verdicts were handed down in the Rodney King beating case. More than 40 fires were set and snipers took shots at firefighters. One fireman was hit in the cheek. He is in serious but stable condition. A curfew, police on patrol, and a new day have calmed the riot area considerably. President Bush is moments away from meeting with Attorney General William Barr about the possibility of federal action against the officers. That meeting scheduled for 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Mr. Bush has called on the people of L.A. to remain calm and obey the law. And Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley will be talking to the press at 12:15 Eastern Time, and CNN will carry his remarks live. We will also keep you updated on the situation in Los Angeles as events warrant.
Right now, Rescue 27 and Rescue 21 are going with a strike team to Vernon and Vermont on a convalescent home on fire.
210 West 7th Street on the roof. Suspect is a male, black, 24 years, wearing a white t-shirt, armed with a gun, possibly a Magnum, in a Century Unit 5607 and RD 174.
2 to 60, David. Stand by. Do you understand? Stand by. Roger. To get this thing knocked out, we'll work our way back over to Florence and catch those fires we passed on the way up here on Western.
Any unit in the vicinity, 2845 requesting a backup on King and Vermont on 459 suspect. Southwest Unit, Southwest Unit 459 suspect in the Africa running Ross Markets. Numerous male blacks and male Hispanics breaking into the location. Code to entry in 5591.
Entry repeat.
Coming up, Day Watch, followed by Cryer and Company, after a word from your local cable system here on CNN.
Mystic Music presents Instrumental Magic, 40 of the most beautiful melodies ever recorded. Just listen to these romantic favorites. Over 2 hours of best-loved classics. Instrumental Magic is only available in this special television offer. Order the enchanting sounds of Instrumental Magic today. 3 records or 2 cassette tapes, only $19.95. 2 compact discs, only $24.95. Here's how to order.
To order, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257. That's 1-800-257-1257. Or send $19.95 for records or cassettes, or $24.95 for 2 compact discs, plus $4 shipping and handling too, Instrumental Magic, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia.